The polished wood floors of the auction house gleamed under the bright lights as the auctioneer's voice boomed through the packed room. Among the crowd of wealthy horse enthusiasts in their designer clothes and expensive watches sat a young boy, no older than 14, dressed in worn jeans and a faded flannel shirt that had clearly seen better days. His eyes, however, sparkled with excitement as he clutched a crumpled piece of paper, his bidding number. "Look at that kid," whispered a woman in pearls to her companion. "Does he think he's actually going to bid on something?" Their snickers weren't as quiet as they thought. The boy's ears turned red, but he kept his gaze fixed on the magnificent Arabian stallion being led to the center of the floor. When the bidding started, the boy raised his number with a trembling hand. The auctioneer paused, looking confused before acknowledging him with a hesitant nod. "We have 50,000 from the young gentleman in the back." Laughter rippled through the crowd. A man in an expensive suit stood up, pointing at the boy. "This isn't a place for games, son. These horses cost more than your house. Security, please escort this." Distraction out. Two security guards approached the boy, who protested weakly. "I'm here with my father. He said I could bid." But his pleas fell on deaf ears as they firmly guided him toward the exit, the crowd's amused murmurs following him out. Outside, the boy leaned against the building, fighting back tears of humiliation. The fancy cars in the parking lot blurred as his eyes welled up. He'd been so excited when his father had handed him the bidding number, telling him to pick his favorite horse. Now he felt foolish for believing he belonged in that world. Just as he was about to walk away, a sleek black truck pulled up. The window rolled down, revealing a weathered face with kind eyes. "They kicked you out, didn't they, son?" The boy nodded, unable to speak through his embarrassment. "Well then," his father said with a strange smile, "I suppose it's time for Plan B." He handed the boy a leather folder. "Hold this for me. I need both hands for what comes next." Inside the auction house, the bidding continued, prices climbing higher for each prized horse. The Arabian stallion had just sold for a staggering sum when the doors swung open. Conversations hushed as a man in simple work clothes walked confidently down the center aisle, the boy trailing behind him, confusion written across his young face. The auctioneer cleared at his throat. "Sir, I believe your son was already asked to." "I know exactly what happened to my boy," the man interrupted, his voice carrying throughout the room without raising it. "And now I'd like to make a bid of my own." The crowd exchanged glances, some smirking, others curious. The man in the expensive suit who had complained earlier rolled his eyes dramatically. "I'd like to purchase," the father continued, pausing as he pulled something from the leather folder his son handed him, "all of them. Every single horse in this auction." The silence that followed was deafening. The auctioneer's gavel hung suspended in midair as the father reached into his pocket and removed something that made everyone in the front row gasp in disbelief. The father's weathered hand held a black credit card that seemed to absorb the light around it. The platinum emblem caught the overhead lights, sending a flash across the room. The auctioneer's eyes widened as he recognized the exclusive card only issued to the world's wealthiest individuals. "Sir, are you saying you want to purchase all 37 horses in today's catalog?" the auctioneer asked, his voice wavering between disbelief and excitement. "That's exactly what I'm saying," the father replied calmly, as if buying dozens of championship horses worth millions was an everyday occurrence. "My son has excellent taste. If he was interested in one, I'm interested in them all." The man in the expensive suit who had complained earlier stood up again. "This is ridiculous. Do you have any idea how much money we're talking about here? Over $40 million at minimum." The boy's father turned slowly, his eyes meeting the man's challenging stare. "I'm all aware of the value, Mr. Harrington. Just as I'm aware that you're wearing those Italian shoes to hide the fact that your company is 3 months from bankruptcy." Mr. Harrington's face drained of color. Whispers swept through the crowd like wildfire. "How did you?" "Let's just say I do my research," the father cut him off. "Especially before attending events where my son might be disrespected." The room fell silent as the auctioneer nervously consulted with auction house officials. The boy tugged at his father's sleeve, his face a mixture of awe and confusion. "Dad," he whispered, "can we really afford all these horses?" His father smiled, ruffling the boy's hair. "Remember the land your grandfather left us? The one the oil company's been wanting to buy for years." The boy nodded slowly, realization dawning on his face. "I finally sold it last month," his father continued. "But that's not why we're here today. There's something you need to understand about respect. It can't be bought, but sometimes a lesson needs to be taught." Before the boy could ask more questions, the auctioneer returned to the podium, looking slightly dazed. Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we have a most unusual situation. Our staff has confirmed that the gentleman's finances are indeed sufficient for his offer. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Phones came out as people snapped photos and typed furiously, no doubt updating social media about the extraordinary turn of events. As the auction house staff scrambled to prepare the unprecedented paperwork, the father led his son toward the stables. "Come on, let's go meet our new horses." Walking down the row of stalls, the boy's eyes grew wider with each magnificent animal they passed. "But Dad, what are we going to do with all of them? Our ranch isn't big enough." His father stopped, kneeling down to look his son in the eyes. "You're right. That's why most of them won't be coming home with us." "Then why buy them?" The father's expression grew serious. "Because sometimes people forget what matters. They judge by appearances, by clothes or money. Today they judged you without knowing who you were or who I am." As they reached the end of the stable, a stable hand approached them nervously. "Sir, there's something you should know about one of the horses. The old mare in the last stall, she wasn't supposed to be in the auction. She's lame and was scheduled to be." The father raised his hand, stopping the man mid-sentence. "Show me." In the dimly lit stall stood a chestnut mare, her coat dull with age, one front leg slightly bent. When she saw them, she lifted her head and nickered softly. The boy gasped. "That's Fireheart." "Dad, she looks just like the photo in your study." The father's face had gone pale. With trembling fingers, he reached out to touch the mare's white star marking. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "It can't be." He checked the number branded on her flank and froze. "Dear God, it is her." The stable hand looked confused. "You know this horse, sir?" The father nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving the mare. 20 years ago, I was the stable boy who raised her, before she was sold to—" He turned to face the auction house, his expression hardening. "Before she was sold to the Harrington family." The stable hand scratched his head, looking between the father and Fireheart. "The mare came with the Harrington estate purchase last month. Mr. Harrington said to get rid of her, didn't even want to pay for feed anymore." The father's jaw tightened as he gently stroked the mare's muzzle. She nuzzled against his hand, her eyes bright with recognition despite the years that had passed. "You remember, don't you, old girl?" he whispered. The boy watched in amazement. "Dad, how do you know her?" Before his father could answer, the sound of expensive shoes on concrete echoed through the stable. Mr. Harrington appeared, flanked by 2 auction officials and a burly security guard. "I demand to know what's going on here," Harrington snapped. "You can't just waltz in and buy everything. These transactions take time, paperwork, all being handled by my attorneys as we speak." The father interrupted calmly, not taking his eyes off the mare. "But I'm curious, Harrington. Did you know this horse was here today?" Harrington glanced dismissively at the aging mare. "That worthless nag? I instructed my stable manager to dispose of her weeks ago. She's taking up space and money." The father turned slowly, his eyes narrowing. "Her name is Fireheart. 20 years ago, she was the fastest quarter horse in 3 states. She won you the Triple Crown Regional Championship." A flicker of recognition crossed Harrington's face, quickly replaced by impatience. "Ancient history. What's your point?" "My point is that I was the one who trained her. I was 16, working in your father's stables to help my family make ends meet." The father's voice remained steady, but his hands had formed fists at his sides. "When your father died and you took over, you fired everyone who knew what that horse was worth to your family's reputation." Harrington snorted. "Spare me this sentimental nonsense. Business is business." "Yes, it is," the father agreed, a hint of steel entering his voice. "And today's business is that I now own every horse that was up for auction, including your prize breeding stock." For the first time, real worry flashed across Harrington's face. "You can't. Those horses are the foundation of my breeding program. Without them, Harrington Industries' equestrian division collapses," the father finished for him. "Just like you were planning to let this loyal mare's life end without dignity." The auction officials exchanged uncomfortable glances. One cleared his throat. "Sir, perhaps we can discuss this privately." "There's nothing to discuss," the father said. "The sale is proceeding. But I'm willing to make one concession." He looked at Harrington. "Tell my son why you really kicked him out of the auction." Harrington's face flushed. "I don't have to explain myself, Toe. You do if you want any chance of keeping your breeding program alive." A tense silence filled the stable. Finally, Harrington's shoulders sagged. "Fine, I recognize the boy." He turned to the father's son. "You look just like your father did at your age. When I saw you raise your bidding card, I knew who you must be. and I couldn't let a stable boy's son outbid me in front of everyone. The boy looked at his father in confusion. Dad? His father placed a hand on his shoulder. Your grandfather was a farmhand. I was a stable boy who worked my way up. The land that made us wealthy now, I bought it piece by piece with every dollar I saved while working for his family. He nodded toward Harrington. Some people never forget where they came from. Others never learn that worth isn't measured by what you own. Outside the stable, voices grew louder as more auction attendees gathered, drawn by the unfolding drama. A woman pushed her way through, her expression concerned. Her elegant riding clothes marked her as another wealthy patron, but her eyes were kind as they fell on Fireheart. What on earth is happening here? She asked. Thomas, why is this horse scheduled for disposal? Isn't this? Stay out of this, Elizabeth, Harrington snapped. The woman, Elizabeth, ignored him, moving closer to examine the mare. I knew it, Mrs. Fireheart. The horse your father cherished. She turned to Harrington, eyes flashing. You promised me she would be well cared for when I agreed to sell my shares in the business. That was our arrangement. The father looked between Elizabeth and Harrington, pieces falling into place. You're Elizabeth Harrington, Thomas's sister. She nodded, a sad smile crossing her face. Former business partner until certain disagreements about the company's direction. She stroked Fireheart's neck. This mare was my father's pride and joy, and the stable boy who trained her. She stopped, studying the father's face. Wait, you're him, aren't you? You're Joseph's boy. Before the father could respond, commotion erupted from the auction house. People were pouring out of the building, phones in hand, pointing at something in the sky. In the distance, the unmistakable sound of helicopter blades chopped through the air, growing louder by the second. The stable hand rushed in, breathless. Sir, the press is arriving. Someone tipped them off about the purchase, and there's a government vehicle at the front gate. Something about an investigation into the Harrington estate's finances. Thomas Harrington's face turned ashen. He staggered back against the stable wall, all pretense of confidence vanishing. Elizabeth turned to the father, her voice urgent. There's something you need to know before those officials get here. Something about my father's will, about Fireheart, and about why you were really fired all those years ago. The truth is much bigger than a feud between families. Elizabeth glanced nervously at the approaching helicopter, then pulled a worn leather folder from her riding jacket. We don't have much time. She thrust the folder into the father's hands. These are copies of documents I found in my father's safe after he died. Thomas doesn't know they exist. The father opened the folder with trembling hands, his eyes widening as he scanned the first page. This is a partnership agreement between your father and mine. The boy pressed closer. Grandpa was partners with the Harringtons. Thomas Harrington lunged forward. Give me those papers. They're family property. The security guard held him back as Elizabeth stepped between them. Their evidence, Thomas. Evidence of what you did. Outside, car doors slammed as people rushed toward the stables. The helicopter was now circling overhead, its downdraft whipping dust and hay into small whirlwinds. The father flipped through more documents, his expression shifting from confusion to shock. Your father left my father 50% ownership of the breeding program, of Fireheart's bloodline. He looked up at Elizabeth. But my father died in that accident before he could claim it, Elizabeth finished, and Thomas made sure all records disappeared, until now. Thomas struggled against the guard's grip. You have no proof that I knew anything about this. Page 17, Elizabeth said coldly. The father turned to the page, reading aloud. In the event of Joseph Miller's death, his share passes to his son. His voice caught. To his son who has shown exceptional skill with the horses, particularly with Fireheart. The boy stared at his father. Dad, that means you? The father nodded slowly, still processing the revelation. All these years, I thought I was just the help. Your grandfather was teaching me the business because he saw something in me. Thomas's face contorted with fury. My father was losing his mind. That agreement would never hold up in court. That's why you fired my father right after your father died, the father said, understanding dawning in his eyes, and why you've been trying to buy our land. You knew it was adjacent to the property mentioned in this agreement. Elizabeth nodded grimly. The northern pastures. The ones with water rights that your entire breeding operation depends on now. A woman in a government blazer appeared at the stable entrance, flanked by two officials. Thomas Harrington, we have some questions regarding the financial discrepancies found in your recent tax filings. Thomas paled further, sweat beading on his forehead. This is a private auction. You have no right. We have every right. the official cut in, holding up a document. Especially given the complaint filed last week about potentially fraudulent handling of estate assets. Elizabeth stepped forward. That would be my complaint. The stable erupted into chaos as reporters pushed past security, cameras flashing. Questions flew from all directions. Sir, did you really purchase $40 million worth of horses today? Mr. Harrington, are you under investigation for tax fraud? Miss Harrington, can you comment on rumors that your family business is facing bankruptcy? The father shielded his son from the cameras, pulling him closer to Fireheart's stall where the mare stood calmly despite the commotion. He knelt down to meet his son's eyes. I need you to listen carefully, he said urgently. What's happening here is bigger than buying horses or settling old scores. It's about making things right. The boy nodded seriously. Because of Grandpa? Yes, and because of promises made. When I brought you here today, I wanted to teach you about standing tall, no matter how people judge you. I never expected, he gestured at the documents. I never expected to find out that half of this legacy was meant to be ours. A loud crash from outside silenced the crowd as another helicopter landed in the field adjacent to the stables. The father recognized the logo immediately. One of the largest agricultural investment firms in the country. The same firm that had been sending him offers for his land every month for the past year. Thomas saw it too and started laughing, a hollow, desperate sound. You think you've won? You have no idea what you've walked into. Why do you think they've been so desperate for your land? Elizabeth grabbed her brother's arm. Thomas, don't. You promised you wouldn't. Promised what? The father demanded. What haven't you told me? Before Elizabeth could answer, an elegant older woman emerged from the new helicopter, assisted by what appeared to be a private security team. The crowd fell silent as she walked purposefully toward the stables. Even the reporters lowered their cameras, seeming to recognize her importance. Who is that? The boy whispered. Thomas straightened his tie, a strange smile crossing his face. That kid, it is Eleanor Wellington. The woman who's about to buy everything, the horses, the land, all of it, and build the largest equestrian resort in the country. Right where your precious family ranch sits. The father stared at the approaching woman, then back at the documents in his hand. Something caught his eye on the last page, a name he hadn't noticed before, listed as witness to the original agreement between his father and old Mr. Harrington. Eleanor Wellington. As she reached the stable entrance, her eyes locked with the father's. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then, to everyone's surprise, the powerful businesswoman's composed expression cracked. Her hand flew to her mouth as she stared at Fireheart. It can't be, she whispered. After all these years, the mare nickered softly, ears pricking forward at the sound of Eleanor's voice. The father looked between the horse, Eleanor, and the signature on the document, pieces of a puzzle he didn't even know existed, suddenly connecting. You knew my father, he said. It wasn't a question. Eleanor Wellington straightened, regaining her composure as cameras began flashing again. Young man, she said, her voice carrying across the now silent stable, I didn't just know Joseph Miller. I loved him. A stunned silence fell over the stables. Thomas Harrington's face drained of all color as he stared between Eleanor Wellington and the father. Even the reporters seemed too shocked to raise their cameras. I met Joseph when he was just a stable hand, Eleanor continued, her voice softening as she approached Fireheart. He had a gift with horses unlike anything I'd ever seen. Old Mr. Harrington saw it too. That's why he made him a partner and not just an employee. She gently stroked Fireheart's muzzle. This mare was the first foal Joseph trained. I was there the day she was born. The father swallowed hard. My father never mentioned you. To protect me, Eleanor said simply. My family wouldn't have approved of our relationship. When Joseph died in that accident, I was devastated. I tried to find his family, but Thomas told me you'd moved away, wanted nothing to do with the horses or the Harrington legacy. Thomas backed away as all eyes turned to him. You can't prove anything. Elizabeth stepped forward. The letters prove everything, Thomas. The ones Eleanor wrote to Joseph that you intercepted. The ones you kept hidden all these years. The government official cleared her throat. Mr. Harrington, I think we need to continue this conversation in our office. As Thomas was escorted out, Eleanor turned to the father. I never gave up looking for you. When I heard about land being purchased around the Harrington estate, I investigated. Finding out it was Joseph's son, she smiled. I came here today not to build a resort, but to right an old wrong. The father looked down at his son, then back at Eleanor. All these years, I thought I was just getting revenge for being kicked out. But it was never about the money or the horses, was it? It was about honoring my father's work. Eleanor nodded. Joseph believed horses weren't just business, they were family. That's why your father and old Mr. Harrington created the partnership, to ensure the bloodlines would always be cared for properly, no matter what happened to either of them. The boy reached up to touch Fireheart's star marking. So what happens now? Eleanor smiled. That's up to your father. The father looked around at the stables, the reporters, the documents in his hand, and finally at his son's hopeful face. He made his decision. We restore what was meant to be, he said firmly. Elizabeth, would you be willing to partner with us to rebuild what our fathers started? Elizabeth's eyes brightened. I've been waiting 20 years for someone to ask me that. The father turned to Eleanor. And I'd be honored if you'd share your memories of my father with us. He died when I was younger than my son is now. There's so much I never knew. Eleanor wiped away a tear. I would like nothing more. 3 months later, the newly established Miller Harrington Equestrian Center opened its doors. Where once stood decaying stables now gleamed state-of-the-art facilities. Fireheart had a special paddock near the main house, where the boy visited her daily, listening to Eleanor's stories about his grandfather. On opening day, reporters gathered again, but this time there was no scandal, only celebration. The father and son stood side by side at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Remember when you thought we couldn't afford even one horse? The father asked his son with a smile. The boy grinned, and now we have 37. Plus Fireheart's new foal, Elizabeth added, joining them. As the ribbon was cut, the father realized that what had begun as a lesson in standing tall despite judgment had become something much more valuable. A legacy restored, a family history reclaimed, and a future built on healing rather than revenge. In the paddock behind them, Fireheart lifted her head and nickered softly, as if in approval. Some might have called it coincidence, but the father knew better. Some horses, like some stories, come full circle in ways you never expect.